are back for another episode of House of Cards. This is episode number 29, and if you haven't yet, please subscribe to this video. I appreciate it. That's all I can say. I really would appreciate it, and I hope that more people continue to join us on this channel, because I hope to continue to get some cool content out there for everyone. And today's conversation is no different, because I think this is something that a lot of people have done in the hobby. Whether you're investing or collecting, there's always that bad decision that you might have made, or that wrong player that you might have invested in. And again, there's a lot of differences between collecting somebody and investing in somebody. So I want to make sure that's clear, because I'm not saying any of this information in the terms of this being about collectors, because collect who you like. If you love some random offensive guard on your football team, then collect them. It's great. However, I think a lot of people that are watching this channel and or enjoying YouTube content around sports cards understands that there is a pretty significant investing angle as well. And myself, like many others, have made mistakes, and there's definitely a lot to be learned from these mistakes. But there's also some things that I did, I guess you kind of say intelligently. It's kind of a contradiction, right? An intelligent mistake. There were certain things that I did that I knew when I was doing what I wasn't supposed to do, which we'll talk about. I at least was sort of insulating the pain that I felt from this by doing a couple key things that made it a little easier now that I'm having to pay for that mistake. So what am I talking about? That's probably what you're saying. Okay, well, as you probably remember, back in the summer, besides the entire market going crazy and basketball and baseball and football was about to begin, around August, early August, or maybe even late July, soccer cards became all the rage. Now, you may or may not have joined into this movement, but there definitely was a lot of hype, and definitely a lot of people out there talking about soccer cards, which inevitably caused a lot of people to jump into the market, and to jump in quite aggressively. So whenever that happens, as we all know, it becomes a simple supply and demand thing. There's not a lot of soccer cards on the market that are graded. There's not a lot of information out there for people to understand the market, and specifically if you don't follow soccer, you may or may not understand who you should be buying. But a lot of people just jumped in headfirst and just bought what they were told to buy, and unfortunately that happened to be this card. Now, you've probably seen this card, you probably heard the name. Kylian Mbappe obviously became the poster child for the soccer card revolution, as we'll call it. He is obviously an amazing player. I don't want to take anything away from him. We'll get into that a little bit later. But he definitely became, quote-unquote, the Luka Doncic of soccer, where a lot of hype was built into him, a lot of interest, regardless of if they knew his play style or knew much about him. And ultimately it caused a lot of inflated prices because of the sudden surge of interest. So myself, being a casual soccer fan, definitely not hardcore by any means, but definitely, have caught a match or two in my life, and I enjoy the sport a lot. I too saw an opportunity to possibly get into this. And I probably made the biggest mistake that you can make while you are getting into a new market, which is jumping in during the extreme height of the market. So here's the breakdown of what happened. So I was kind of on the sidelines looking at soccer from about, early July till later in July. And finally I said, you know what, I'm going to pull the trigger. Because you never know, maybe this market is underserved. And, really, it's hard to determine whether pricing is high or not when you're using basketball as your metric to understand how much pricing should be. You got basketball players that are in their first year, barely proven, with PSA 10 selling for upwards of $1,000, right? We can name a handful of rookies right now that would fall into that category. No proof, no championships, no playoffs even, right? just pure speculation. So with that mindset, I think a lot of investor collectors thought about the soccer market as, wow, we got these guys like Neymar, we got these guys like Messi, we got these all-time greats like GOATs that are pennies on the dollar compared to these basketball players. So what happened was, I think a lot of people just looked at that market and said, you heard it before, right? It's the world's most popular sport. It's international, blah, blah, blah. There's, all of the same talking points that everyone says, why soccer should be bigger than what it was. So I think what people did was they naturally agreed with that philosophy and decided to buy into it. Myself included. So what I did was I circled around the player that I thought had the most upside, who was young, who was still sort of in his prime, who had a lot to play for still. Messi and Ronaldo are great, but, they've been doing it for a while. They're in their 14, 15, 16th season, whereas this guy was only in his third, fourth season. So I invested in Kylian Mbappe. Now, the problem is I invested at the extreme peak of his pricing. So we're going to look at a couple of things here to kind of show you, but the first thing I want to talk about is the actual card that I bought. So one good thing that I did was I did not buy the base Prism card. I knew enough as a collector that base cards are very volatile and typically are the ones that lose value the quickest if something was to happen. So, me being somewhat smart in this case, I decided to invest in a short print parallel. So, I purchased the 2018 Panini Prism World Cup Kylian Mbappe Red Blue Wave. And the reason why I liked the Red Blue Wave was because it was a color match to his jersey, because Paris colors for PSG are red and blue, and that's obviously the national colors as well. And since this was a national card, because it's from the World Cup, I thought it looked really, really nice. So one thing I wanted to do was get a short print parallel, not just buy the base card. So kudos to me for that. Now, the second thing I did was I bought a BGS 9.5 instead of a PSA 10, because I knew the values on those were a lot lower. Not the values, the price on those were a lot lower. So when I did that, I kind of had the idea of, let me look for one that had good subs that could possibly cross over to a PSA 10 to also hedge my investment a little bit, knowing that what I paid for the BGS 9.5 was significantly lower than had I bought that same card in a PSA 10. So we're going to take a second here. We're going to look at what the overall pricing is for the card in a BGS 9.5 and in a PSA 10. Now, granted, please understand that this chart is only for the base card, because they don't have the analytics for the Red Blue Wave specifically in both grades. Even though there has been sales, for whatever reason, Market Movers doesn't have that in here, but this will paint a perfectly fine picture for us. So we can look here at these dates. I started August 1st and I ran it to today. So as you all know, here is the soccer hype right here from about August 11th to about August 21st. So about a 10-day ramp up that was unprecedented. Pretty crazy stuff. But what we could see here is the blue line, which represents the PSA 10, and then the purple line, which represents the BGS 9.5. Look at that price difference. So if we start going towards the early hype here, you can see on August 13th, the 9.5 BGS was going for $999.99, so called $1,000. And the PSA 10 was going for $23.94, so more than twice the cost for PSA 10 versus the BGS 9.5. So I actually bought my card on August 14th. It's not reflected here, but BGS 9.5 for $1,500 versus a PSA 10 for $2,600. So a little bit closer, but not, even in the ballpark, right? $1,100 and some change less for a 9.5. So the bet I made was that I can get a 9.5 and cross it over to a PSA 10. So what I did is I looked for a 9.5 in a parallel, the red blue wave, that had strong subgrades. Because I know crossing over, if you're just doing a true gem, 9.5s all the way across the board, what I've heard and what I've come to realize is you got about 30 to 40% of a crossover. But if your subgrades have a 10 in there on top of the 9.5s, then you have a really, really good chance of getting a crossover to a 10. Mine, in particular, had 2 10s. So I felt super, super confident that this would cross over, so I hedged my bet on buying this card and crossing it over to a PSA 10. So with that said, I also wanted to make sure that what I was buying into was something that could potentially have upside. So the big event that was coming up was the Champions League finals, which Paris, PSG, Kylian Mbappe's team, was a part of. They were playing Germany in it, and Bayern Munich. They were very close, and many people regarded it to be kind of a 50-50 opportunity that PSG could win. So my thinking was, hey, invest in this card 10 days before the tournament. If they happen to win, boom, we're in business. I send the card off to PSA the same day I get it. Actually, it's the day after, but you get it. And I send it in express, hoping to get it back quick enough. So problem number one, it didn't get back in time. It got back a week after the finals. So I kind of screwed that one up a little bit. I wasn't aware that their express times were as back as their regular standard times were, in terms of, instead of it being a 5 days, it's more like a 15-day. So at any rate, what happened was PSG played, and unfortunately they lost 1-0 to Bayern Munich. So as you can see on this chart, starting from the 23rd, where the game was held, it's a death spiral down for the next week and a half. So that same PSA 10 that was going for a peak of 29.47 is now, just 10 days later, worth $1,400. So half. It dropped half within 10 days. So by the time I got my card back, my card's value has dropped significantly. However, I did save a little bit by crossing it over to PSA, and for the fact that it was a short printed parallel, which still had a very, very low pop count at that time versus the base card, which is what we're looking at on these charts. So what do you do, right? This is the question. What do you do when you make a mistake like this and you have a card that has lost significant value? And it's no big deal if you're talking about a $20 card that went to 10, right? It's no big deal if you're talking about a $50 card that went to 30, right? But when you're talking about a card that I purchased for $2,250 that dropped about half in value, what do? Do you panic sell and just say, you know what, screw it, I'm going to take the loss and reinvest that $1,000-ish into something else? Yeah, I mean, that's one thing you could do. And I know a lot of people that do that. They don't hold cards that plummet. They want to just get it out and reappropriate that money into something that could make them money. So they're basically hedging their losses on finding another card that could potentially go up and basically recoup that money that they lost. I could have done that. However, my decision was based on a couple factors. And the key factor is the player that is on that card. Now, they didn't win the Champions League, which is, one of the most prestigious soccer leagues and competitions in the world. But anyone with half a brain knows that Kylian Mbappe is a special talent. It's kind of like people losing faith in Luka after he doesn't make it out of the first round of the playoffs in the bubble. People want to just dump his cards. they would keep his cards, assuming he's going to come back next year and maybe be an MVP, maybe make it to the finals, right? So I decided to keep the card. Now, I started looking at things. I started researching Mbappe even more than I knew about him. And if you don't know who Mbappe is, let's take 1 second real quick to look at him as his very short career that started very, very, very at a very young age. So we'll keep it real simple here, but he has won so many awards and has had so much, success in such an early phase of his life that I think that we can all assume that he's got a lot ahead of him. He's only 22 years old, and he just turned 22 years old. So, he was, originally playing for Monaco when he first got called up. And when he was in Monaco, he had a lot of, great development. He had a lot of accomplishments. He had a lot of, breakthroughs in his career during that time, which made it very tempting for PSG, Paris Saint-Germain, to want him. So they basically, towards the end of 2017, acquired him. And he was, at that time, the most expensive teenager ever to be acquired in soccer. And if you don't know soccer is all about youth. You're talking about kids are getting signed on these teams when they're 15, 16 years old. So the youthfulness of soccer is very, very, very coveted. Very, very coveted. So him being a teenager and getting acquired for the dollars amount that he did is incredible. So once he got acquired by PSG, he went on a tear. He scored a goal on his debut. He did pretty much everything that you would expect him to do, being as hyped of a prospect as he was. He was a 2018-19 League One Player of the Year. Huge deal. He was the back-to-back league top goal scorer in 1920. He also had a lot of success in the World Cup, which is really where his name was made. He played in the 2018 World Cup, so you got to imagine that was 3 years ago, so he was still probably just 19 years old, or maybe just turned 20. I think he was 19. At any rate, he played for France, because that's his nation that he represents, and he scored a goal in the first round in Group C over Peru. So that made him the youngest French goal scorer in World Cup history at age 19. So yes, he was 19. And then he was named man of the match in their win over Argentina, scoring twice. And then he was the second teenager to ever score 2 goals in a World Cup in that same match against Argentina. And guess who was the only other one that did it in 1958? Pele, considered the greatest soccer player of all time by many people. So fast forward a month or two, the July 15th was the World Cup finals against Croatia, and he scored. He became the second teenager, again, after Pele, to score in a World Cup final. He scored 4 goals in total in the tournament, and that made him win the award, the FIFA World Cup Best Young Player Award. Anyways, his accolades go on and on. Again, PSG just last year made it to the Champions League finals. This year, they're in it to go back again, possibly. And something bigger is he's always been on the trading block for people to possibly want to bring him to a bigger team. So here's a little article from just a day or two ago talking about him going to Real Madrid, which in many people's accounts would put him on a whole nother level in terms of his popularity, in terms of the money he'll make, in terms of, just kind of that international platform. So think of it like LeBron being on the Cavs and then LeBron being on the Lakers. You're just on that more historic legacy team. And if this happens, and this probably won't happen until 2022, but if this happens, that could be another huge spike in Mbappe's interest and popularity, which would then make his cards even more valuable. So by me saying all this is basically, I'm hedging on the fact that Mbappe was caught up into this whole storm of soccer hype and the card market going nuts over the summer of 2020. And what I think is going to happen is the market is going to rebound, and it's going to rebound correctly this time. It's not going to be this crazy, astronomical upward movement that we saw in August. But what we're going to see is something a little more correct. So let's go back to this same market movers charts. But this time, let's change the dates from August 1st until, closely to today. Now let's change this from just the last month. So let's go December 13th until January 13th. Now what this is going to show us is a whole new story. We'll take the BGS 95s out because that doesn't mean too much to us. But if you look down here, the PSA 10 has grown 53%, has gained $320 in value over the last 30 days, selling for about $1,000 for the base. So even though I don't have the exact numbers on the red blue wave, the base is obviously a proxy that we can use to understand the growth of it coming back. So while that last chart looked pretty depressing, showing the trajectory from August until now if you look at the last 30 days, we're starting to see it come back up. And I have a feeling as we come into the summer and soccer's other tournaments start popping up, the Olympics pop up, and then of course the following years having the World Cup come back again, we're going to see this card potentially get close to where it once was, if not go higher, if Mbappe continues to perform and be the brand of soccer. Because he is the brand of soccer right now. You can put him down as a Zion type character, except that he's actually accomplished a lot of stuff. You can put him down as a LeBron, but without quite as much accomplishments as LeBron, but with the same sort of reverence that the industry holds for him. So the lesson I learned in this is mistakes will be made. Cards like this will be bought. Prices may drop. Players may get injured. Things may happen. But if you're a good student of the game and you understand what you're doing and you're investing in the sport and the person as much as you are the piece of cardboard, and you understand that maybe there's certain things that could happen in the future or in the near future that may potentially make this card appreciate or get back to the place that it once was, I think you're going to have a lot more success in this than the average person who's just flipping on a chart that just tells them it's going up and down, up and down. You gotta dive deeper. You gotta understand what you're investing into. If you're investing in basketball players, watch the games. If you're investing in baseball players, watch the games. Soccer, watch the games. Football, watch the games. Because you're never gonna get the full story by just seeing the reactions of the market. Because the market is dictated by a lot of things. It's not just the players' abilities or their popularity. It also is affected by outside things too, that you may be putting too much importance on. So the lesson I learned, don't buy at the height of hype, the height of hype. Buy when you have a player that you like, that you feel confident in, that will be a good player to invest in for the future. Don't buy just because you hear their name a lot or you see someone else posting pictures of their card and the value has gone up. Study the players, study the sport, understand it, and you're going to have a lot more success in this industry. All right, that's my rant. I hope this was somewhat helpful for you guys, and I hope if you found yourself in the position like I did, that you have the faith to hold on if you feel like the player is going to become what you thought it was going to become when you bought it at that price. However, if you don't have faith and you're looking at it purely as a flip, and you want to reinvest your money into something else because you've lost faith in that person, then you know what? Sell and go find somebody that you have faith in. All right. Until next time, guys. Peace.